Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioners stakeholder meeting to discuss the rule review for regulated lenders. My name is Matt Nance, and I'm the OCCC's Deputy General Counsel. I'm joined by several members of the OCCC staff, including Commissioner Leslie Pettyjohn, Licensing Team Lead Kenesha Daniels, Supervising Examiner Carl Hubenthal, Assistant General Counsel Audrey Spalding, and Senior Paralegal Ginger Harmon, who's acting as our meeting organizer. We're holding this meeting through an online webinar, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. Getting input from stakeholders is a really important part of our rulemaking process, and these meetings help us make sure that we can produce the best rules possible. Our webinar platform is GoToWebinar. Some of you might be listening on your phone, some may be viewing on a computer, some might be doing both. For those viewing on a computer, there's a questions window where you can submit comments to staff. And if you have technical questions about using the webinar, you can type them in there and Ginger will try to answer those technical questions. We're discussing a pre-comment draft of rule amendments that's available on the OCCC's webpage for recent and upcoming rules. On that webpage, you can see the draft rules by clicking on the link for regulated lender rule review. If you have any comments on the rule amendments, you can go ahead and type those in at any time, and I'll be getting to those. And if you're on a computer with a mic, there is a function allowing you to raise your hand, and then we can let you make a comment verbally. We're talking about rule amendments that come out of a process called rule review. The Texas Government Code requires state agencies to review their rules every 4 years to make sure the rules should still exist and make any necessary updates to the rules. And when we do that, we try to get input from stakeholders on whether the rules should be updated. The rules governing regulated lenders in Title VII, Chapter 83, Subchapter A of the Texas Administrative Code are currently up for review. So first, I'd like to summarize these draft rule amendments and then lay out the proposed timeline for the rules, and then you'll have a chance to provide comments. In this draft, we have 9 different sections with proposed rule changes coming out of rule review. In section 83.101, we'd amend language on the scope of the rules to explain that they apply to consumers located in Texas. This is based on some statutory changes in HB 1442, the 2019 Sunset Bill for the OCCC. And in section 83.205, we'd add language about online loans in a section describing loans by mail or the internet. This is also based on statutory changes in HB 1442. In section 83.301, we'd update the definition of net assets to explain that debt may be subordinated to the net asset requirement under certain conditions. And in section 83.404, the changes relate to our review of a license applicant's criminal history. The amendments include technical corrections and updates to citations based on HB 1342 from 2019. In section 83.503, the changes would adjust the maximum administrative fee for a consumer loan under Chapter 342, Subchapter E of the Finance Code. I wanted to provide a little background on this amendment. Subchapter E consumer loans tend to be larger personal or secured loans, averaging around $5,000. The legislature has set out maximum interest rates in Subchapter E, and these rates vary by loan amount, but tend to be in the range of 18 to 30%. The administrative fee is an upfront, non-interest fee that compensates the lender for the administrative costs of closing the loan and providing money to the borrower. In 2013, the legislature authorized the Finance Commission to adopt a rule setting the maximum administrative fee. The Finance Commission adopted the $100 maximum in 2013, and it has not been adjusted since then. Under the draft amendments, the maximum administrative fee would be set at $125 through June 2023 and would then be increased annually based on the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. CPI is a measure of the change over time in prices paid by consumers, and it's widely used as a measure of inflation and the overall price level in the economy. The methodology in the draft amendments is similar to the process that the OCCC uses to adjust rate bracket amounts under Chapter 341 of the Finance Code. And as I'm sure we've all seen in the news, CPI has increased substantially since 2013, particularly in 2021, and is projected to continue increasing in the next year. So this strongly suggests that overall costs have increased since 2013 and will continue to increase. We believe that the CPI methodology will enable the administrative fee to keep pace with increasing costs. So that summarizes the draft amendments on the administrative fee, and we're certainly interested in hearing stakeholder feedback on that issue. The rest of the changes are fairly technical. In section 83504, 83602, and 83703, we'd remove references to the Federal Reserve Board's Regulation AA, which was repealed in 2016, but we'd still maintain current references to the Federal Trade Commission's credit practices rule. So even after these changes, lenders will still be prohibited from charging late charges just for failure to pay previous late charges, a practice also known as pyramiding. And in section 83.834, we'd make technical changes relating to unclaimed property and escheat of unclaimed funds to the state to update a statutory reference and a reference to the unclaimed property division of the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. So that's the summary of the draft amendments. Here's a proposed timeline for the rule amendments. You can see that we're requesting informal pre-comments by next Monday, January 31st. We intend to propose the amendments at the Finance Commission's February 18th meeting. There will be an official comment period during the month of March. We'd present the rules for adoption at the Finance Commission's April meeting, and the rules would be effective in early May. This is, of course, just a tentative timeline, and all of this is subject to the Finance Commission's approval of the rules. So with that, I've summarized the rule action, and I'll open things up to comments on the rule amendments. Again, there are two ways to provide your feedback through this webinar. First, you can type your comment out and send it to us through the webinar's question feature, or if you're on a computer with a mic, there should be a function allowing you to raise your hand, and then we can allow you to make a comment verbally. Also, if you have a longer written comment, feel free to type a quick message into the question field and go to webinar, explaining that you have a longer message. Okay, so Ginger, I'm seeing a message showing that we have a hand raise from Deborah Polland. So Ginger, could you unmute Ms. Polland?
Hi, this is Deborah Polland. Just one second, hold on. Can y'all hear me? I've got two things going on and I'm not sure if you can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, let me turn off this television. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Deborah Polland, and I'm here today representing the Texas Consumer Credit Coalition. The TCCC is a member-driven organization of community-based lenders licensed by the OCCC under 342E of the Texas Finance Code. Our mission is to provide increased availability of quality community credit to Texans that is carefully underwritten for the ability to repay and provided at fair and reasonable prices. We are very appreciative to be able to provide comments at this session, and thank you for all the work you've done on this rule review. We are here in support of your rules. As you may recall, we requested a review of the current administrative fee authorized in 83503 of the rules in light of increasing expenses that we have experienced over the past several years. We originally requested an increase to $200, in part because our members have experienced increased costs such as salaries and rents, and in part because we were very concerned that we wouldn't have another opportunity to revisit this issue for several years. Further, we also felt that some of the costs in our original calculations were fairly included. While we had the stakeholder meeting in August, We heard the opposition to this review of the fee, and we went back and we looked at our costs again, and we understand where the opposition is coming from. We think some of the marketing costs are validly included, but we do understand where the department is and where the opposition is. And in that regard, we support the recommendation and feel like the annual CPI adjustment after this year is a fair approach to resolving this issue. So those are my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions, and just want to let you know how we appreciate your listening to us. We didn't always agree on this, but your door was open, and we appreciate you letting us work toward resolution of this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Ginger, do we have any other hand raises or comments submitted through the chat? Okay, I am not.
Ginger, the organizer, we do have a hand raise from Mr. Morstead, Tim Morstead.
Okay, could you, Mr. Morstead?
Mr. Morstead, you are unmuted. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment. Mr. Morstead, can you hear us? Mr. Morstead, you are unmuted. Can you hear us? Mr. Morstead, I believe we can hear you. Can you hear us? Hello, Mr. Morstead? Matt, at this time, if we could go on to our next question that we have in, and then we can come back to Mr. Morstead. Would that be all right?
Sure, that works.
Okay, the next question is from, let's see here, we have Rashah Shin. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you here.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great, thank you. Hello, I have some longer written comments that I'll read out if that's okay with the organizers. My name is Rashah Chin. I'm the Legislative Counsel for the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, and I appreciate this opportunity for the agency to participate on proposed amendments to increase the permissible administrative fee under 7 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 83. The Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops is the public policy voice of the Roman Catholic Church in Texas. As bishops representing almost 9 million Catholics in Texas, we're united in our advocacy for the working poor Texans who turn to short-term loans and other financial products. Over the last couple of decades, our churches have been active in consumer protections and financial reforms at the legislature with a variety of partners, including with the Texas Fair Lending Alliance and the Faith Leaders for Fair Lending Groups. We actually participated in your pre-comment process. We submitted some pre-comments last year when the agency initially requested information from stakeholders on this proposal. So I'm not going to reiterate all the points that we made in that submitted letter to the agency, but I just want to focus on 2 points today. First, given that our coalition was opposed to the initial proposals to have the fee increased by 100% from $100 to $200, we still remain concerned at the $125 in these latest amendments because it still allows for those future increases pegged to CPI after 2023. While the OCCC believes that the draft rule would provide an effective method to keep pace with increased costs, we still do dispute that premise. As our previously submitted letter presented, a fee increase is not justified because after we've done an analysis of the administrative costs and the own financial reports of the 342E lenders of closing a loan and providing money to borrowers, we've actually seen that costs have decreased for these lenders in the 8 years since the rule was originally adopted. We believe there are limitations to CPI that don't take into account COVID-19 shifts of work, technology, increased efficiencies. In any event, the cost increases still should not be borne by borrowers who are already suffering from the debilitating effects of inflation, the latest numbers of 7% according to the US Department of Labor. My second point is that COVID-19 has impacted the economic status, social supports and stress levels of clients and families of our Catholic Charities, St. Vincent de Paul societies, and other ministries. Administrative fee increases would cause greater stress to Texans precisely at a time when the need is increasing and when our ministries have already had to modify service deliveries to comply with health requirements. It would be imprudent for the agency to simply review the status of these lenders apart from the broader community in which they exist. We urge the agency to promulgate rules that are truly practical, flexible, and empathetic to the negative externalities and increase in fees would cause to the poor and vulnerable persons that we serve. While there may be a time and place to discuss justified administrative fee increases, we do not believe that's the situation. At the least, maintaining the current administrative fee would ensure that the financial well-being of Texans would not be further harmed as we enter into the third year of the COVID-19 pandemic. I will note that we submitted a public information request to the OCCC regarding the submissions made during the pre-comment process. And apart from our coalitions, the faith groups and the TFLA, no stakeholders have really asked for this fee increase, at least according to the last process. Ultimately, lessening the financial burdens upon Texans will help them to build the foundation to reach their full God-given potential. So we respectfully asked the agency to reconsider this administrative fee increase, and the Texas bishops assure you of our continued prayers as you seek to build a fair, lawful, and healthy economic environment for all Texans. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. It looks like Mr. Morstead may have logged back in online. Ginger, can we try Mr. Morstead again?
Mr. Morstead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry about the technical troubles here. My name is Tim Morstead. I'm here on behalf of AARP and our 2.3 million members in Texas. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the rule review amendments related to regulated lenders, specifically the proposed amendment to increase the permissible administrative fee for regulated lenders under Chapter 342E. The draft amendment would increase the maximum administrative fee from $100 to $125 through June of 2023 and would then be increased annually based on the Consumer Price Index. AARP has concerns that this proposed rule is unsubstantiated and would increase the cost of credit for older Texans at a time when many are facing extraordinary health and financial challenges. Older Texans are experiencing a variety of financial concerns in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. From having enough income to pay bills and manage healthcare costs to saving for retirement, Americans 50 and older have a lot to worry about. In fact, a recent AARP survey found that for women ages 50 to 64, these concerns are particularly acute. These women are expressing strain across a variety of financial fronts. Nearly 4 in 10 women aged 50 to 64 say the economy is not working well for them personally. Close to half of women 50 to 64 say that they have taken unplanned negative action, such as skipping medical care because it was too expensive, and prioritizing the health of a loved one over their own, or skipping or reducing prescription medication due to costs. The survey found that an unexpected expense of $1,000 would be a major setback for more than 4 in 10 women aged 50 to 64. The draft amendment before you today to increase the administrative fee will make it more expensive for these women to get the credit help they need. AARP is equally concerned about the impact of this proposal on Texans 65 and older. Older Texans faced increasing financial challenges and often have less capacity to recover from financial shortfalls. At the median spending level, nearly 80% of the dollars spent by those 65 and older simply fill their basic needs of housing, healthcare, food, clothing, and transportation. More expensive loans will further strain the finances of these older Texans. Finally, it's unclear how the 25% administrative fee increase and perpetual annual CPI increases beginning 2023 are justified. We have not seen evidence that substantiates these increases. The administrative fee compensates the lender for the administrative costs of closing a loan and providing money to the borrower. Labor, software, hardware, and office space have been identified as permissible cost components of the administrative fee. Absent specific data to show net increases in these and other underlying cost components, it's exceedingly difficult to justify an increase. Thank you for considering our feedback today, and we look forward to working with you in support of the financial well-being of Texans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morstead. It looks like we had another hand raise from Ann Bedore. So Ginger, could you unmute Ms. Bedore?
Ms. Bedore, you've been unmuted. You can go ahead and speak. I believe you need to unmute yourself as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to offer comments. You know, this is, I guess, the second stakeholder meeting on this issue, but the third time that comments were requested, and we've participated in this process all along and have submitted information and data. And I do want to reiterate, like, I have partially a question and a statement. You know, I have a lot of the same concerns that AARP and the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops articulated about how this will impact consumers, and especially because we haven't seen any data supporting this issue. I know some of the issues that we're raising in the initial stakeholder meeting were people talking about marketing expenses, and is marketing, it's unclear to me how a marketing expense is an expense that's specifically used in the origination and funding of a loan. And yet those were expenses that were talked about a lot in the initial stakeholder meeting. People talked about the expenses of how expensive it was to get higher on Google searches so that people would click. People talked about direct mailing expenses that are really advertising and have nothing to do with the specific costs of originating a loan. And most perplexing was that a lot of people asserted that increased adoption of online channels as well as added technology were things that didn't have any efficiencies and no cost savings. And I know I heard also commentary from the OCCC staff themselves saying that it was perplexing that those wouldn't have any cost savings or efficiencies. And so I appreciate this process, but I haven't seen any data submitted that justify this increase. And in fact, in looking at the stockholder reports and the public documents that are available, it seems that these businesses are very profitable. They're buying back stock, they're paying high dividends. They're talking about a lot of the very positive financial aspects of their business, and we couldn't see any disaggregated data that documented the need for this substantial increase, and especially an increase in perpetuity, because attaching this to the consumer price index is an assumption that costs will always go up. But we know that that's not the case, that efficiencies happen, technology changes. And so to make that assumption and build it into the rule is something that's very concerning, especially because in the end, it's about the pocketbooks of Texans and how this impacts credit and makes it more expensive for people. You know, there were also conversations about refinances, and is it really the same cost to have a refinance as it is to have an original loan? the lenders assert yes, but in my experience in talking to borrowers and reviewing contracts, a lot of refinances are actually spurred by the lenders themselves, and they will actively market refinances sometimes. And so there's a lot of gray area there, and I think a question about whether or not the same fee, especially at this higher rate, should be charged for those transactions. And I haven't seen any documentation to support that. So my question is, what is the added data that was provided that justifies this increase in the rule?
Okay, so stakeholders, provided some information. And you're right. I really appreciate all the feedback that all stakeholders have provided. The stakeholders did provide some official comments in response to the rule review notice, as well as pre-comments in December and comments at various stages. I think in looking at overall costs and how the legislature has connected increases in overall costs to CPI, we looked at that and thought that methodology would be a suitable methodology to apply here as well. But this is, of course, still certainly open for comment. We welcome comments on this issue before we determine what we're going to present to the Finance Commission in February.
And Matt, this is Felicity John. I just wanted to make one clarification because I've heard it referenced several times that it would that the fee would automatically increase every year. So there's a formula that results in the calculation of the fee, but the fee doesn't automatically increase every year. Again, it would be the proposal that is drafted that we're considering. It could adjust, but it depends on what the rate of inflation is. And there are times when the rate of inflation, if the rate of inflation was low, it may not change. And potentially if it had risen, there may be opportunities that it may fall. And so it is more dependent upon the actual calculation, and it's not necessarily a guarantee automatic increase every single year. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
I could say by comparison, because we do the rate bracket adjustments and those calculations, there are many years that the rate brackets have not adjusted. And so this is similar methodology.
Okay. Ms. Bedore, did that conclude your comments?
Yes, that did conclude my comments. I just did want to, I am a little confused about the data submitted though, because I think Mr. Chin had made the comment that there didn't appear in the most recent pre-comment period or the formal comment period to be multiple comments submitted, or very few. But I don't know if there was data that we weren't able to view that was submitted during those periods, or is that a correct reflection of the comments that were received?
If I remember right, there was some additional information in the comments, and stakeholders are free to request copies of those.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bedore. I'm not seeing any other questions or hand raises at this time.
Matt, I'm sorry, this is Ginger, the organizer. We have another question from Mr. Chin.
Okay.
Mr. Chin, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
since you just referenced some of the internal data that y'all use to calculate the need for a fee increase, would you be able to share that with stakeholders? And if so, like, would we just do a public information request for that? And how would I phrase that to make sure it's responsive to that data that y'all use to calculate the fee increase and necessity of that?
You can file a request. We'd have to review the text of the request. I'm not sure how much can be responsive to it. I think to the extent that there are calculations that mainly has to do with comparing CPI from different periods.
Mr. Chin, this is Audrey Spalding, Assistant General Counsel and Public Information Officer. Of course, our stakeholders are free to make, any request of the agency, as I've discussed with you and others who are on this call right now. Those will have to be vetted at the time that the request is made, just to determine what is and isn't responsive and what might be confidential that would be subject to an AG determination.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Audrey, for all your help, by the way.
Absolutely. Happy to help.
Okay, we have a hand raised from Brianna Gordley. Ginger, could you unmute?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. As everyone has mentioned, I just want to reiterate my appreciation for the ability to offer comments. And so far, everyone's comments have been extremely helpful, but I was really curious, more so about the direct fiscal impact that this proposed fee increase might have on consumers. Has the agency considered or thought about any ways to potentially mitigate the impact on this fee increase for borrowers and what that can kind of look like?
Well, that's something we would invite further comment on. If that's part of the purpose of holding a stakeholder meeting, is make sure we get feedback on the impact that this has on stakeholders. So, if you have comments on that, please feel free to submit those. And that feedback is a really important part of the process of working on these rules.
Matt, I would just want to add that anytime we make a rule adjustment, we always consider the impact on the public and on borrowers. And when you're making public policy decisions, we're trying to balance and weigh the impact on the availability of credit along with the cost to consumers. So it's always an item of intention, and that we're very mindful of as we consider any kind of policy recommendation to the Finance Commission. People are always welcome to provide us with additional comments on that, but we're always mindful of that.
Okay, I'm not showing any other questions or hand raises at this time. I do want to make sure everyone's had a chance to comment, so I will wait for 1 minute just to see if we get any other hand raises or written questions. Again, if you have a longer written comment and want to type that into the questions window, you feel free to type a shorter statement that you have a longer comment, and we can wait a little bit longer to give you time to type it out. But otherwise, I will wait 1 minute before we move on to conclude the meeting. And feel free to use the raise hand feature or submit something through the questions window. Okay. And I still don't see any hand raises or comments, so I will move on and conclude. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and participating. Again, rule updates are available on our website, and we'll also be posting the audio of this meeting. We are accepting written pre-comments on these rules until 5 p.m. on Monday, January 31st. Please email those to me at rule.comments@occc.texas.gov, which is our email address for rule comments. Thank you all for attending. Please be safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.